Did you know that the filming of the Passion of the Christ was surrounded by events so intense, so unexplainable, that many believe they were nothing short of miracles, real injuries, mysterious phenomena, a presence in the air that no one could quite explain? Jim Caviezel, the actor portraying Jesus, didn't just act the pain, he lived it. He was accidentally struck, crushed under the weight of a real wooden cross, and even struck by lightning during filming. But the strangeness didn't end there. Members of the technical crew reported bizarre equipment failures, devices that simply stopped working without cause. Some even claimed to feel watched by unseen eyes lurking in the shadows. Yet here's the most astonishing part. Instead of halting production, these incidents only deepened the conviction of everyone on set. It was as if Christ's suffering wasn't just being captured on film, but was unfolding in real time among them. Were these mere coincidences, or divine signs from something far greater? Stay with us and prepare to uncover the truth. But how can God be present even in the most difficult, painful moments? From the very beginning, Mel Gibson made it clear the Passion of the Christ would not be just another film. It would be a raw, unfiltered journey into the final hours of Jesus. A journey so powerful, it would transport viewers straight into the heart of first-century Jerusalem. To bring this vision to life, Gibson took bold, almost unthinkable risks. He insisted the entire movie be filmed in Aramaic, Latin, and in Hebrew, the actual languages spoken during Jesus' time. This wasn't just a stylistic choice. It was a way to strip away the distance of history and connect the audience to the story in the most personal, emotional way possible. And that was only the beginning. The film sets were constructed in Matera, Italy, a town seemingly untouched by time. Every stone, every wall, every shadow was crafted with painstaking detail to mirror the world Jesus walked. The level of historical accuracy was so intense, each scene felt like a portal through time. Like you weren't just watching the story, you were inside it. But the challenges weren't only technical, they were deeply spiritual. Gibson knew this project would demand more than creativity. It would require faith. Nearly every major studio turned him down, calling the idea too controversial, too unmarketable. Still, he refused to give up. Instead, he stepped out in radical faith, personally financing the entire $30 million production. Because to him, this wasn't just a film, it was a calling. Mel Gibson's decision to finance the Passion of the Christ wasn't just an act of boldness, it was an act of sacrifice. A commitment that mirrored the very message the film was meant to convey, giving everything for something far greater than oneself. And as the cameras rolled, the production began to mirror the suffering it sought to portray. One of the most talked about and unsettling aspects of the film was the series of accidents and strange, unexplainable phenomena, many of which directly affected Jim Caviezel, the man portraying Jesus. One of the most harrowing moments occurred during the filming of the scene where Jesus carries his cross. To achieve absolute realism, Gibson insisted on using a real heavy cross. During one intense take, Caviezel stumbled under its weight and fell hard. His shoulder violently dislocated on the impact. The agony captured on screen in that moment, it wasn't acting. It was real pain, real suffering, and many on set couldn't help but draw the parallel. For just a fleeting second, Caviezel had tasted a shadow of the agony Christ bore on the way to Golgotha. But it didn't stop there. During the brutal flogging scene, a technical error led to something horrifying. One of the whips missed its mark and struck Caviezel directly, tearing through the protective barrier and slicing into his back. The blow was so severe it left him with a permanent scar. The set fell silent. Yet Caviezel didn't stop. He pressed on, bloodied and bruised, driven by something deeper than performance. For many, it became a living echo of Isaiah 53:5. By his wounds, we are healed. Was this a tragic mistake or something greater? And then came the most inexplicable moment of all. While filming outdoors, Caviezel was suddenly struck by lightning. Yes, lightning. It was a moment so surreal, so improbable, it stunned the entire crew. Though miraculously, he survived with only minor injuries, the impact was jarring enough to shake everyone to their core. In the middle of filming a story about the final moments of Jesus, lightning had struck the man playing him. Coincidence? Or something divine? For many, it was the clearest sign yet that this was no ordinary production. And the signs didn't stop with Caviezel. the technical crew faced their own mysterious challenges. Equipment that had been rigorously checked, lights, cameras, sound systems, would inexplicably fail, often during the film's most emotionally charged scenes. No explanation, no warning. It was as if something unseen was interfering. But in the face of these frustrations, something beautiful began to happen. Crew members, many not particularly religious, began to pray. Not scheduled prayers, spontaneous ones. In whispered desperation, they turned to faith. And astonishingly, on several occasions, the issues resolved immediately after these prayers, without a single technical adjustment. It was as if heaven itself was responding. Then there were the presences. Several crew members, especially during night shoots, reported the eerie sense that they were not alone. Shadows that moved with no source, a feeling of being watched, yet strangely, no one felt fear. Instead, many described it as a peaceful, almost sacred presence, as if something holy had joined them on set. These deeply spiritual encounters, along with the physical and emotional toll of production, created an atmosphere unlike any other. Each day felt like a sacred ritual, a living testimony to the message they were working so hard to bring to life. The Passion of the Christ wasn't just a film being made, it was a divine experience being lived. The emotional and spiritual impact of the Passion of the Christ extended far beyond the physical demands and technical challenges of production. It left lasting imprints, deep, personal, and often life-changing, on the hearts of the cast. Each actor, in their own way, experienced something that transcended the screen. The film's message began to intertwine with their own lives, awakening feelings, memories, and reflections they never anticipated. For Maya Morgenstern, who portrayed Mary, the mother of Jesus, one particular scene would become a deeply transformative moment. It was the scene where Mary cradles the lifeless body of her son. The emotional intensity of that moment was overwhelming. Maya later confessed that after filming, she was so consumed by grief that it took her hours to recover. In that brief yet powerful scene, she said she felt an unshakable connection to every mother who has ever lost a child. For her, it was a moment of sacred empathy, a glimpse into the unfathomable sorrow Mary must have felt at the foot of the cross. That experience didn't just enrich her performance, it changed her. It opened a new path of spiritual reflection, forcing her to confront themes of love, sacrifice, and loss on a soul-deep level. And she was not alone. Claudia Gerini, who played Claudia Procula, the wife of Pontius Pilate, also found her role bleeding into her personal life in mysterious ways. During the filming process, Claudia began to have recurring dreams, vivid, powerful dreams depicting scenes from Jesus' life, scenes that weren't even part of the script. These dreams stirred something within her. They spoke to her heart, prompting deep questions about faith, purpose, and the spiritual dimension of life. For Claudia, these were not just dreams. They felt like divine whispers, personal messages that pushed her to reflect on her connection with God in a way she never had before. When the project ended, she described her experience not simply as a role in a film, but as a spiritual awakening. A moment where her craft and her faith collided, forever reshaping her outlook on life. These were not isolated stories. One by one, members of the cast and crew began to share similar experiences, moments where something sacred seemed to break through the screen, drawing them deeper into the message of the story they were helping to tell. For many, working on the Passion of the Christ wasn't just another job. It was a journey of faith, a personal encounter with something greater. They weren't just portraying the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. They were living echoes of it, a story that transcends cultures and religions. The success of the Passion of the Christ would have been impossible without the bold and visionary leadership of Mel Gibson. He wasn't just the director. He was the driving force, the heartbeat of the entire production. From day one, Gibson demonstrated a rare level of dedication, an uncompromising pursuit of perfection, both artistically and spiritually. He demanded that every detail be historically accurate and emotionally truthful. The script was written and spoken entirely in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, the actual languages spoken during Jesus' time. The sets were meticulously recreated to reflect first-century Jerusalem with haunting authenticity. Nothing was left to chance. And despite widespread rejection by major studios, who labeled the project too controversial, too risky, Gibson refused to abandon the vision. So he did the unthinkable. He financed the film with his own money, It was a breathtaking act of faith, a personal sacrifice that inspired the entire crew. Gibson wasn't just making a film, he was answering a calling. And while his obsession with detail pushed the limits of production, it was his humanity that made the greatest impact. During cold, punishing night shoots, he constantly checked on his crew. On one particularly brutal night in the pouring rain, he halted production, not for creative reasons, but to pass out blankets and hot tea to the shivering extras. That moment reminded everyone, this wasn't just about getting a shot. This was about people, about purpose. It was about something sacred. Mel Gibson's leadership taught a powerful lesson. When perfectionism is tempered with empathy and faith, it can unite people in extraordinary ways. He didn't just direct a film, he led a mission, one that deeply resonated with every soul who joined him on that journey. And no one embodied that mission more than Jim Caviezel. Taking on the role of Jesus was not a decision Caviezel made lightly. In fact, Gibson warned him, this could end your career. The spiritual weight of the role and the controversy that would surely follow might cost him everything he had worked for in Hollywood. But Caviezel didn't flinch. I believe we have to do this, even if it's hard, he said with quiet conviction. And hard it was. He endured excruciating injuries during filming, a dislocated shoulder while carrying the cross, permanent scars from a whip that struck too hard, and most incredibly, a lightning strike during an outdoor scene. These weren't movie stunts. They were real, physical, painful. But beyond the physical trials came something even harder, the aftermath. After the film's release, Caviezel was met with silence from the industry that once celebrated him. He was labeled controversial, and opportunities vanished. Yet he never expressed regret. For Caviezel, this wasn't just another role. It was an act of devotion, a sacrifice, a reflection of the very story he had helped bring to life. If this can bring someone closer to Christ, closer to understanding his sacrifice for his silence, he said in an interview, then every injury, every hardship, it was worth it. His journey invites us to ask ourselves a deeper question. What are we willing to sacrifice for our beliefs? In a world that often values comfort over conviction, Caviezel chose the road less traveled, the narrow, difficult path of faith. And in doing so, he became more than an actor. He became a witness. If it brings someone closer to Christ, Caviezel said, then it was worth it. His story leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. What are we truly willing to sacrifice for our beliefs? In a world that often prioritizes comfort, conformity, and approval, Jim Caviezel chose conviction. He chose to walk the harder road, to put his faith above his fame. And in doing so, he challenges each of us to reflect on how we respond to adversity. What choices do we make when our beliefs come at a cost? How do our sacrifices, big or small, impact the world around us? And then came one of the most mysterious moments of the entire production. They were filming on a mountaintop under a clear blue sky. It was supposed to be a smooth outdoor shoot. The weather was perfect, until it wasn't. Without warning, a violent gale swept across the set, ripping through production tents and creating chaos. Equipment shook, crew members scrambled, and then a bolt of lightning struck near the very spot where the cast and crew had been working. No one was hurt, but no one forgot it. It wasn't just the force of the storm that left an impression, it was the timing. They had been filming one of the film's most spiritually significant scenes, one that reflected Jesus' divinity and ultimate sacrifice. For many on set, the sudden shift in weather wasn't just a freak occurrence. It felt like something else, a sign. A sacred reminder that something far beyond human understanding was unfolding in their midst. Nature itself, it seemed, was responding to the story they were telling. Throughout Scripture, God's presence is often revealed through natural phenomena. From the wind that parted the Red Sea for Moses, to the darkness and earthquake that shook the earth at Jesus' crucifixion. For those witnessing the storm, this wasn't just weather. It was a divine echo, God's silent yet thunderous affirmation of the story being brought to life. That moment didn't just shake the ground, it shook their hearts. What began as fear quickly turned into reverence. People prayed, reflected. The entire crew stood in silence, humbled by what had just occurred. It was no longer just a production. It was a sacred encounter. And this was not an isolated moment. Each unexpected challenge, each strange occurrence, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, seemed to remind everyone on set of the greater purpose behind their work. That they weren't just telling the story of Christ's suffering and love, they were becoming part of it. The mission was clear: to share a message of sacrifice, love, and redemption with the world. And heaven itself, it seemed, was watching. Among the many unexplained events that occurred during the filming of The Passion of the Christ, one in particular continues to stir both awe and wonder. It happened during the shooting of a crowd scene. Several extras reported seeing a mysterious figure, dressed in light-colored robes, walking calmly among them. At first, they assumed it was just another actor. But when the scene ended and questions arose, no one on the crew could identify the person. No name, no trace, no explanation. Despite efforts to find out who it was, no one matching the description existed among the cast or production team. It was as if the figure had simply appeared and then vanished. Those who witnessed it were left shaken, but not in fear. They described a presence that radiated peace, something sacred, something holy. To many, this was no illusion. It wasn't a trick of the light or a fleeting imagination. It was, they believed, a sign. A celestial reminder that what they were creating was more than just a film. It was a work touched by the divine. Scripture speaks of moments like these, when angels or messengers appear to offer guidance, comfort, or warning. Often they come in quiet, unassuming ways, and yet their presence changes everything. For those on set, this encounter was unforgettable. It became one of the most talked about stories behind the scenes. A moment that transformed the atmosphere on set from reverent to almost sacred. People began to reflect more deeply, to pray more often, to carry themselves with renewed humility. It was no longer a movie production, it was a mission. From the very beginning of filming, many in the cast and crew sensed that this project was different. But as the challenges mounted, the physical strain, the spiritual intensity, the strange phenomena, that sense turned into conviction. They weren't just telling a story about Jesus, they were participating in it. Actors, technicians, even background extras began to share how the film had touched their personal faith. Many described an unseen force, a shared spiritual energy that wove through every scene, every word, every tear shed on set. It was as if everything they did was aligned with a divine purpose. Jim Caviezel's physical suffering, the supernatural encounters, the overwhelming emotion during the most intense scenes, even the spontaneous prayers that would break out in moments of despair. All of it created an atmosphere unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. They weren't just co-workers, they became a community, a family united by one purpose: to deliver a message that would pierce the hearts of millions. This collective experience invites a deeper reflection. Can God reveal himself through art, through film, through our most human efforts? Can something eternal shine through? The Passion of the Christ began as a cinematic vision, but by the time it ended, it had become something more. For many involved, it was a spiritual journey, one that changed them forever. It left a permanent mark, not only on their careers or reputations, but on their hearts. Because the message they shared wasn't just told, it was lived. A message of suffering, of sacrifice, of redemption, and of faith that endures no matter the cost. Even in the most ordinary human endeavors, there is room for the divine. When The Passion of the Christ was released in 2004, it wasn't just a movie premiere. It was a cultural and spiritual shockwave, one that stirred the hearts of millions and left a mark that time has not erased. But it did not arrive without controversy. From the very beginning, the film ignited fierce debate. Some criticized its graphic violence, calling it excessive. Others accused it of anti-Semitism, sparking heated discussions in academic, religious, and social circles. Was it a raw, authentic portrayal of Christ's ultimate act of love and sacrifice? Or was it simply too brutal, too extreme, to be spiritually edifying? Despite these questions, one truth stood above the noise. The emotional impact of the film was undeniable. It moved audiences to tears. It sparked moments of deep introspection. It inspired spontaneous prayers. Across denominations, religious leaders praised the film for its unwavering faithfulness to the biblical narrative and its unflinching depiction of Christ's suffering. Few productions before or since have captured the agony and the love of the cross with such raw power. And the impact didn't stop at the theater doors. It reached into the lives of those who made the film. Jim Caviezel, who gave everything to portray Jesus, paid a high personal price. After the release, his career in Hollywood slowed dramatically. Studios viewed him as too controversial, too closely tied to a project steeped in faith. But Caviezel accepted the fallout with peace. He said portraying Christ wasn't just a role, it was an act of service. a declaration of faith. It reshaped his life, not just professionally but spiritually. It deepened his commitment to live out the truth he had helped bring to the screen. And while the film cost him opportunities, it gave something far more precious in return. It gave him purpose. The film's financial success was staggering, over $600 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. But what may be even more remarkable is what Mel Gibson did with it. He didn't keep it for himself. A large portion of the film's profits was quietly funneled into humanitarian work, building schools, funding hospitals, and supporting communities in need across the globe. The message of love and sacrifice wasn't just preached, it was lived, and the ripple effects continue. The Passion of the Christ opened the door for a new generation of filmmakers, artists who had once been afraid to tell sacred stories. It proved that there was an audience hungry for truth, for beauty, for meaning. It showed that faith, when told with courage and authenticity, can move mountains. But perhaps the film's greatest legacy isn't what it did for cinema, it's what it did for hearts. It sparked conversations across kitchen tables, churches, and universities. It brought families together in reflection. It helped countless people rediscover a faith they had forgotten or never truly known. Because this was never just a movie, it was a call to remember, a call to believe, a call to reflect on a sacrifice that changed the world. And for those who answered that call, The Passion of the Christ became more than a film. It became a turning point, a holy interruption, a reminder that love, real, sacrificial love, still has the power to pierce the soul. The Passion of the Christ became more than just a film. It became a spark, a starting point for conversations about the meaning of Jesus' sacrifice and its relevance in our modern world. It challenged viewers to look beyond the screen and into their hearts. It reshaped the landscape of religious cinema. But more importantly, it touched the hearts of millions because the message it carried, a message of redemption, love, and hope, is timeless. It transcends generations. It crosses cultural boundaries. It speaks to the deepest parts of who we are and what we long for. The Passion of the Christ was never just about what happened 2,000 years ago. It's about what's still happening today, inside every person who dares to believe, who chooses to follow, who embraces faith in a broken world. For those who engage with its message, the film became not just a story, but a spiritual experience. And the challenges faced by the team behind the film, they weren't just tests of endurance. They were reminders of the struggles we all face as believers. Like them, we encounter moments that feel impossible. We carry burdens too heavy. We walk paths that seem too dark. But this story and the story it tells reminds us of something powerful. God can use even our pain to fulfill His purpose. The accidents, the emotional toll, the unexplained events on set, they became more than behind-the-scenes stories. They became living testimonies, proof that even in adversity, God moves. He shapes us, He strengthens us, and sometimes He shows up in the most unexpected ways to remind us that we're never alone. Thank you for watching this video. We'd love to hear from you. Do you believe these were coincidences or divine signs? How has the Passion of the Christ impacted your faith or view of Jesus' sacrifice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to read them and discuss with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more powerful stories like this one. Check out the videos now appearing on your screen. Click and keep exploring faith, truth, and the stories that move your soul. May God bless you abundantly. Amen.